I'd like to thank Lake Landor for this opportunity. I jotted down a couple of notes here. I declared that I was running as a write-in candidate maybe about 10 days ago, and there's a rumor going around that this was some grand strategy of mine, that I planned this all along in order to avoid head-to-head competition during the campaign season. I can assure you that is not true. If it were, it would be a pretty stupid idea because not being on the ballot puts you at a distinct disadvantage. So we decided, Danielle and I talked about this. This was a decision that was generated about 5 weeks ago is when it started, when after church one day, my pastor and several other members of the church said some things to us that got us thinking, and we started discussing whether we would, whether I should do a write-in campaign. And when we finally decided that we were going to do it, we decided we needed some rules. And the first rule we had was that we were going to have fun with this. And we've tried to make this as a fun. We've included the kids and everything. You may have seen the kids are in my ad. Josie's in the radio commercial. We have a campaign headquarters in Bowling Green. The kids have been hanging out there. We've had a lot of fun with it. The kids are here today. And in fact, it is my son's third birthday, Charlie's birthday. So I'm going to say, if we could all, at the count of three, say happy birthday, Charlie. You ready? Birthday, Charlie. 1, 2, 3. Happy birthday, Charlie. The second rule that we had was that we were not going to talk about my opponent or the sheriff's race. For some reason, everybody wants to talk to me about the sheriff's race. But some things have happened. My opponent has said some things in the press. A lot of you may have received a robocall in the last 24 hours from my opponent, and he said some things, and I feel like it's important to address some of the things he said. Just a part of the truth can be as misleading as a lie. Let me give you an example. Let's say you'd never heard the story of the boy who cried wolf, and you ask someone, what's that story about? And they said, well, this boy was being attacked by a wolf, and he cried out, and the village people ignored it, and the wolf killed the child. And you would say, oh my gosh, the people in the village are just horrible. Now, that would be true. That is what happens in the story. But you've left out so much of the rest of the story that it gives you the wrong impression. And I would submit to you that what my opponent has said over the last several days is just a part of the truth, and it is misleading. And people have a right to know the whole truth. And what is that? You've heard from my opponent that I endorsed him back in June. That's been a centerpiece of his ads, and that is true. But it's not the whole truth. And what he has left out are the circumstances surrounding that endorsement. So I'm here today to tell you what those circumstances are. You all may remember back in May, I went through a bad stretch. It happens sometimes. I was accused of an assault over a DUI manual in a courtroom, and I got a lot of bad press. In fact, in the covers of the Virginia Lawyers Weekly, there was an article, and it had a cartoon of two lawyers doing a tug of war over a DUI manual. Shortly after that, Mr. Mahoney came to my office and told me that he was going to run against me, and he held up that article and he says, I'm going to go around this county and show this article to everybody in the county, and nobody's going to want to vote for you. And do you really want to put yourself through that? Do you really want to put your family through that? And you know what the answer was? No, I don't want to put them through that. And he said, it doesn't have to be like that. And we made an agreement. We hammered out that agreement on June 7th. I met with Mr. Mahoney. My wife was there at Denny's. I know the waitresses will remember this. My children were in the booth next to us. Mr. Mahoney and Danielle and I were in the other booth, and it got fairly heated at some points. And our deal was this, that if I decided not to run, and if I had endorsed Mr. Mahoney, and he ran unopposed, that he would hire me as his chief deputy Commonwealth's attorney. We agreed on what my salary would be. I want to spend more time with my children. We agreed that I would only have to work 50 hours a week on average. Sometimes I might have to work more. That I could work 20 of those hours at home from a remote location. We had this deal all worked out. Except there was one sticking point. And this is what we argued about. Mr. Mahoney did not want any more trouble with the sheriff's office. And I had received information very recently that Sergeant Marshall M. Ellett with the Caroline County Sheriff's Office had engaged in criminal wrongdoing. And Mr. Mahoney said, it is a part of our deal that you bury that. You do not go to anyone and report about that wrongdoing by Sergeant Marshall M. Ellett. And I agreed to it. I sold my soul. But I was troubled by it. That was on June 7th. I was troubled by what Mr. Mahoney had made a part of our deal and that I had agreed to. It started to wear on me. It started to bother my conscience. And so finally I decided I need to check with the State Bar about what my ethical duties are. And I contacted the State Bar at the end of June and told them about what I knew to be the criminal wrongdoing by Sergeant Ellett with the Sheriff's Office. And the bar was very clear in their response. You have to disclose this. You have an ethical duty to disclose this, and you must do it. Now, Mr. Mahoney and I had been on the phone a lot. I was going to be his Chief Deputy Commonwealth's Attorney. We were talking about what we were going to do together, all the plans we had, etc. I called Mr. Mahoney. I remember the day. It was July 9th. And I told him what the State Bar had said. I said, John, I've been so troubled about this, about burying the evidence of wrongdoing by Sergeant Ellett, that I checked with the bar. His response was, that's where you made your mistake. Of course they were going to tell you you had to report it. Why did you go to the bar? And from that day forward, our deal was off. I was not going to work as his Chief Deputy Commonwealth's Attorney. So what did I do? I had the Kessler no-body murder case coming up. It was in July and August. It was the end of July. It went over into August. And I didn't have time to look at anything else. I had to focus on that. That was the most difficult case I will ever have. Some of you may have read about it, the Kessler no-body murder case. Very tough case. And so I spent the rest of July focusing on that. It went over into August. And then once August was over, I turned my attention to preparing a report about what Sergeant Ellett had done. And I filed it with the Attorney General's office, and I provided it to every defense attorney who practices in Caroline County. It is not a small report. This is it. This is the report. It's a 48-page report with documents supporting it. And I filed it. And it has merit. And I know it has merit because on Wednesday, Lieutenant Travis Nutter with the Caroline County Sheriff's Office stated in open court in the Circuit Court of Caroline County that the state police are investigating Sergeant Ellett and that they have assigned a former FBI agent who was with the state police to head that investigation. I did the right thing. Mr. Mahoney didn't want me to do it, and it cost me a position as Chief Deputy Commonwealth's Attorney in his office. And still I wasn't going to run for re-election. And then when I went to church about 5 weeks ago and the people in my church started talking to me, Danielle and I started talking. Mr. Mahoney has said a lot of things in his ads. One of them is he says, with him you'll get justice, not drama. He said, with him you'll get honesty and integrity, you'll get principles, not decisions made based on principles, not on personalities, and that you'll get someone who is engaged in service to others, not himself. Believe me, this stuff is not for myself. I don't do this for myself. I love my job, but this is for service to others. He said that I don't work with the Caroline County Sheriff's Office well. That is not true. He says that I don't talk to the deputies before we go to court. I talk to every deputy every time before I go to court, at least the day before trial. I talk to the deputies so much about their cases that I've got most of their numbers memorized. Major Moser, 994-4821. Investigator DeGravio, 994-4943. Investigator Wright, 994-7345. Lieutenant Nutter, 994-4941. I'm in constant contact with the deputies in the office, and they appreciate that. In fact, since I've declared, over half of the deputies who live in Caroline County have come to me and said they are glad that I'm running and they plan to vote for me. If you want a Commonwealth's attorney, one of the things Mr. Mahoney has said is that he is going to have a better relationship with the Sheriff's Office. I pledge to communicate and work with them in a way that has not happened in years, justice, not drama. If you want a Commonwealth's attorney who will make nice with other agencies in government at any cost, John Mahoney is your man. But you have a choice. If you're dissatisfied with me, you know my record. If you're dissatisfied with me, vote for John Mahoney. But if you want me to continue to be your Commonwealth's attorney, you're going to have to write my name in, and you're going to have to fill in the little circle next to the blank space where you write it in.